Testing, 1, 2, 3. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we'll start with the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. The lands we know today as the Township of Centre Wellington have been home to the Indigenous people since time immemorial. We acknowledge that we are on the treaty lands and traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee. With increasing encroachment by non-Indigenous settlers in the Township of Centre Wellington, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee could not continue their traditional lifestyle and settled in the villages along the Credit River and in the Grand Valley. These Indigenous nations uphold their treaty rights within our jurisdiction. Today, the Township of Centre Wellington remains home to Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We are grateful to have the opportunity to share and respect Mother Earth and are committed to building constructive and cooperative relationships with Indigenous nations.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Addendums and corrections to the agenda. None. Disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to declare a pecuniary conflict with report number item 8.3, the municipal endorsement of County Wellington OPA 126, due to the fact that some of the lands in question were represented by MHPC planning. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Presentation and announcements. We'll move down to item 5.1. And we'd like to invite Angela Stanley, President and CEO of Groves Memorial Community Hospital, and Allison Armstrong, Managing Communication, Stakeholder Relations, and Physician Recruitment from Groves Memorial Community Hospital. We'd like to invite you up right now and look forward to your presentation. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. We wanted to take the opportunity to speak to Council about Groves year in review. I fully recognize that some of this data is 23-24 because we are not done our fiscal year end. So where there's any significant difference, I'll point it out to you as we go through this. And Allison, so you're not just listening to me, is going to talk about the physician recruitment aspect of this going forward. So these are just some of our statistics, as I'm sure you're well aware of. The growth of our three communities is going to be significant over the next 10 or so years. And as a result, we're starting to see increased occupancy pressures, increased patient volumes at our three sites across the Alliance. So for the Council's, information, the Wellington Healthcare Alliance is made up of three hospital sites, two corporations, obviously Groves Memorial, but also North Wellington that has sites in Palmerston and Mount Forest. Interestingly, we've done some clinical priorities planning this year. And what we've seen is some very specific patient populations that we want to focus on because we see these patient populations growing over the next several years as well. So 16% of our population will be between 20 and 34, and that has impact on our obstetrical services. And then we also have a significant aging population, which is not news to anybody in healthcare. We also have a higher number of patients who are experiencing some mental health illness within their comorbidities, particularly anxiety disorders. And then, of course, for whatever reason, people in our Wellington County have higher blood pressure. We can speculate as to why that's happening, but these statistics are from 2023, 2024. They are not fundamentally different from what we're projecting from this year. We see about a 5% increase in admissions year over year. And for those of you who may be aware, our occupancy at Groves is running anywhere between 125 and 145% occupancy. So very, very busy, lots of patients coming in and more admissions. And that's typically representative of a higher acuity of the patients that we're seeing. Where we have seen a decrease in 24-25 is oncology visits. And I'd like to say that's because there's less cancer in our community, but that's not the case. We are working with Grand River Regional Cancer Center to make sure that our clinic is fully utilized for serving the patients for the municipality. I'm going to turn this slide over to Allison so she can talk to you about physician recruitment specifically.
Hello, everybody. In 2022, we launched the hospitalist position at Groves, and this is a role in which physicians provide dedicated care to inpatients admitted to the hospital. And since then, this program has expanded to include 2 hospitals during the day. And in the next fiscal year, we're about to add, it's called a nocturnist, so another hospitalist through the night. So I'm happy to say through this past year, we've recruited over 31 new hospitalists to our hospital, as well as 7 new emergency room physicians, 2 full-time general surgeons, and 1 new obstetrician gynecologist. So we've had a lot of success at the hospital with physician recruitment. We continue to aggressively recruit for community family physicians through our medical education training program, locum opportunities, site visits, marketing, attending local, national, and international career fairs. The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario has recently eased licensing restrictions for those training abroad. And we're hoping that these new changes will encourage international medical graduates to come to Canada. An example of that would be a lot of our Canadians can't get into our Ontario medical schools, so they tend to go to the US or overseas to train. And with these new restrictions that have been eased, this makes it so much easier for them to come home. So elbows up, I'm hoping they're coming home. So we're fortunate to have a supportive group of family physicians helping to promote Centre Wellington to our medical trainees as the place to live and work, and are heavily involved in our recruitment efforts. We will continue to work on new initiatives to attract and retain doctors to Centre Wellington, including this year creating a physician recruitment video, which the township has been very supportive of us to be able to do this and help market our communities, hospital, and family physician opportunities. Back to you.
Recruitment activities have been strong for non-physician related positions in the organization. So you can see here we have recruited a significant number of nurses in all categories. So this is temporary, permanent, full-time, casual, and part-time, along with support services, administration, and students. And just for council's awareness, we do hire clinical students for summer positions under an extern program. So we will recruit anywhere and everywhere, particularly local students, because they tend to stay locally. So it's a great initiative from the ministry. And organizationally, we've invested significantly in orientation programs and professional practice support for new hires, for our more seasoned clinicians who are learning new skills ongoing throughout the year. One of our key priorities for this fiscal was the development of a clinical priorities plan. So we've done that. It's almost ready to go, but we really wanted to make sure that we were focusing across the Alliance on what it is that we need to do. How do we gain efficiency? How do we become centers of excellence in particular areas of clinical care? And we are focusing our time and energy over the next 3 to 5 years on emergency care. And within emergency care is mental health. The majority of our mental health patients are seen in crisis in our emergency department, and we're trying to avoid that at all costs. We're looking at ambulatory care and surgical. Those are combined. And how do we enhance diagnostic imaging? We need to enhance our women and children's program. In particular, how do we strengthen obstetrics? Groves now takes the majority of deliveries from North Wellington, so how do we support that community as well? And in terms of general medicine, our patient population is sicker, so we need to enhance the services offered within general medicine. In terms of empowering a meaningful patient journey, you will all know that we have a new CT scanner. And the fact that the community could raise the money as quickly as they could to support that is just fantastic. Key priorities of focus for us last year and this year is really expansion of our patient satisfaction survey, working with our patient family advisory committee. We want to make sure that we have a huge opportunity to get feedback from those that we serve to improve the care that we're providing. And because we are experiencing a higher rate of aging population within the organization, we're focusing on implementation of senior-friendly hospital strategies and ALC strategies as well. And for those of you that don't know, ALC is alternative level of care. So those are patients who no longer need acute care services. However, they sometimes get stuck because there's nowhere for them to go once they've done that acute service. So we're working with our partners on trying to advance that backlog, for lack of a better term. These are our financials for last year. We ended last year in a deficit of just about 2.7 million. We're projecting close to a $3 million deficit at Groves this year, and it's primarily related to our occupancy pressures. We also have a structural issue in our complex continuing care beds and our medicine beds. So when the new Groves was designed, it had 10 complex continuing care beds. They were never opened that way. It opened during COVID, so they were converted to acute. And there's about a $3 million deficit in terms of funding for acute beds to CCC beds. So we're working quite closely with our ministry partners to address that structural deficit that's occurring. Those are some of the highlights for this year. I would say next year is we're kind of moving forward with the same initiatives because there's a lot of work to do with that. But what we wanted to do is make sure that we took the opportunity to thank council for their support. The support that you've given us related to professional recruitment is remarkable, and it's not unnoticed with the clinicians that are coming to the community. The fact that they have a place to stay that's very close. The support that you give us in terms of recruitment activities is significant. So I wanted to express our thanks to you for continuing to support us on an ongoing basis with those activities. That's the end of the presentation, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Comments, questions from council? Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, through you. Thank you, Angela and Allison, for the presentation. Just going to the emergency care that includes mental health, will that mean that there will now be a psychiatrist or psychologist on call that has privileges at Groves, or how will that work?
There's lots of opportunity. We're exploring different patterns. We're exploring with Guelph General and Homewood, so we're typically the front door for patients who are in crisis. So how do we ensure that patients are getting to the right place to receive care sooner? And then we are working with our partners in primary care around what might be possible for on-site psychiatry, whether it's with us or with primary care, it doesn't really matter, as long as we have some access. So I don't have anything concrete right now. We have a group of people who are really motivated to work together to support this patient population. We just have to figure it out now.
Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, sir. Thanks so much, Angela and Allison. Not sure there's a bigger fan of both of you at the table than me. Thank you for your continued hard work to bring our hospital up to a better and better place all the time. My question is around the Nocturnist. By the way, huge congrats on the hospitalist plan that you've got going on. I've seen it firsthand, and the system is working incredibly well. With regards to the Nocturnist, do you anticipate that this person will be strictly PM, and then would one be enough? Or would there be, because then that obviously we can't have 7 days, 31 days a month, 7 days a week. So is there an opportunity for the Nocturnist and hospitalist to share? And finally, does he or she require any different skills?
So they don't require any different skills than hospitalists. They're nocturnists just because they're working at night. I affectionately refer to them as possums, but nobody seems to go with that one. So they have the opportunity to either work strictly nights or a combination of days and nights. And we have groups that are choosing to do both. So their skill set is no different. We do have an emergency room physician, but as you may or may not be aware, we don't have a hospital physician present. They're on call, so when we need them. But because of the changing acuity of our patients, having someone strictly dedicated to that, who's not our family physician group, is really important. So if a family physician comes in and has to do a transfer in the middle of the night, to be frank with you, it messes with their entire primary care schedule. It impacts access. So this alleviates that for them, and it leaves nurses a little bit more supported. We have young nursing staff on our medicine unit, so it gives them a bit more support through the night in terms of management of care. So we will have 2 physicians as opposed to 1 plus call to support care after hours and on weekends.
Wonderful. Looking forward to seeing that go forward. Thanks again to you and your teams.
Councillor McDonald.
To you, Mayor Waters, thank you so much. That's sort of a good news story, really, presentation. Long time coming. I especially noted how many nurses you've hired. that's got to take some pressure off. Thank you for doing that. That's not an easy task. I noticed Guelph General went to hospitalists a long time ago, so that's super great to see, and hopefully it will take pressure off the family doctors. My question is, how are we doing on family doctors, and where we are at that? Because I do get those questions from the public, but thank you.
I'm going to turn that one over to Allison.
Good job all around.
Well, right now it's highly competitive, right? Right across the country, right across the world for family physicians. I think COVID took a lot out of many, and it's taken a while to build that back up. What I can say is our resident group that's currently with us right now are very keen and excited to potentially stay on. But what we tend to find once they finish graduating is they want to, what's called locum, kind of try it out. So sometimes and it helps them to pay off debt too. So they go to community, work for a little bit. There's no overhead with that. And then the hope is they keep saying, we're going to come back and work with us. So we've got quite a few seeds planted right now. So I would say residents that were 2 years graduated now, they're the ones that we're trying to say, okay, it's time to come back now. We're ready for you. And we're really working with our physician group to figure out creative ways to encourage them, to support them. They're coming out with massive debt loads. The last thing they want to do is take on the expense of having to run a clinic and staff and all of those things. So there's definite challenges, but I find there's lots of new opportunities, especially with these, the College of Physicians easing the restrictions. It's opening up the market a bit so that we can hopefully encourage more to come in and live and work with us. Why wouldn't you, right? Beautiful community and beautiful work environment with a new hospital and our physician offices. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're
That's
welcome.
excellent news.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions from council? Again, thank you very much for your presentation. I had the opportunity to come and see your CT scan, and it was just amazing. And you could just see a lot of smiling faces there within the group, and you speak highly in terms of the community rallying together to put the dollars together for that. Obviously, a very expensive piece of machinery that will be much used in our community, but that a testament again to our community. So, but I really appreciate you coming out tonight and giving us a State of the Union this way, and just a wonderful opportunity to meet with you again, and thanks for all the work that you do.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go down to item 5.2, County Council report, and I see Councillor Mary Lloyd. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Mayor Waters and councillors. Thanks for the invitation for attending my first of 2025. I'm going to make it brief, but I'm going to start off with a little bit of levity. Just in on the news, the Elora Waste Transfer Station will be closing effective close of day, April 5th. So it will be going out in the news, the press releases and everything will be happening, and I'm sure you'll get lots of calls about it. That the last day of activity is April 5th. So while that station will be closed for renovations, you'll still be able to use Riverstown, Rossay, and Bellwood. Those are the closest stations in the Wellington system. Alrighty, now moving on. A big road project has just been tendered and accepted, and while we don't think that our residents use very much Highway 109, which is just east of Arthur, it impacts 4 bridges that we'll be doing concurrently. Our hope is to keep the traffic still moving through there while the construction is going on. It will be significantly reduced in our speeds, but we do have a lot of our farming community that do move vehicles around between the different townships, so it is going to be affecting a lot of residents both in Wellington North and in Centre Wellington through the agricultural world, as well as our transportation system, which is 109, is a busy, well-traveled road. Just wanted to get that out there, that it'll be probably not finished until late 2026 because it's a pretty involved project. Our automated speed enforcement, of which I'm sure all of you have had plenty of conversation with residents on, 87% of the tickets that are issued are from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. 12% from 5 p.m. to midnight, and only 1% from 1 a.m. or midnight to 7 a.m. So significantly reducing the overnight traffic for that speed, but we're trying to bring it down, certainly when we have a lot more children moving around in using Bellside for school and comings and goings. There is a continual review that's going to happen on the next potential 10 locations. And I want you to know that the revenues for the one-year trial, it has been decided that it'll go in the Roads Reserve Fund. It's not having any plan of where it's going to go for the penalties, as we don't know how much it's going to be, or whether we're going to move forward with more locations, or how that's all going to work out. So right at this point, it'll all be considered in the 2026 budget. Winter response program for those that are homeless and having challenges that are living on the street in the county and in Centre Wellington. That program will continue until the end of April, where there is alternative housing options for those that need help. The Economic Development Committee is working and looking very closely at what's going on with the tariff activities, and they want to keep in conversation with our businesses here in Wellington to see how it may impact, certainly in the agricultural world, and they're keeping a close eye on what's happening in that area. Programs in the libraries and the museum have been in very busy need over the March break significantly, but going forward, and there's many new residents that are finding that the free services and attendance at the museum and the library to do activities is a really desired thing, as we all know that our budgets are kind of getting a little tight right now. And just a little note from our Safe Communities meeting, and I know that going forward you'll be hearing from Councillor McDonald on this. One of the issues that we got into a great discussion through the leadership table was to do with e-scooters. Now, I want to clarify, because many of us, myself included, thought of an e-scooter, or we've heard residents use scooter for the name of their mobility device. In fact, I'm talking about a scooter that is a platform that is initially started by a kickstart with 1 foot, and it has one set of handlebars. These scooters can go up to 30 kilometers an hour, just below that. There are a lot of regulations around must be 16 years of age to operate one, must wear a helmet up to age 18. And in fact, the City of Toronto has banned them completely on streets and trails and other places. So the province of Ontario is looking at different things, and I'm going to leave it with Councillor McDonald to bring more information forward to you, because it's consideration for your township to look at how you would like to handle it, whether it be through bylaw, acceptance, trails, like whatever it is that you would like to do. But it was a very interesting conversation that happened at Safe Communities, because it is something that I don't know, as all of us are aware, that they go that fast, or that they can be that dangerous, or that in many cases some of the users are under the age of 16 and should not be. So just wanted to get that out there, and that's my report.
Thank you, Mary. Questions or comments for Mary? Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, sir. Thanks so much, Mary. I think one of the most interesting things you shared today is that 87% of those ticketed happened between, I was writing furiously, 7 a.m. and what?
5 p.m.
Thank you for clarifying that, because our goal was to keep the kids safe, and your information really confirms that for me. Thanks so much for coming today.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions for Mary? Well, Mary, thank you very much for your fulsome presentation and your intro. I really enjoyed that. So. Okay, we're going to move down to item 5.3, Councillor Committee updates. Yes, Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. I'll start with safe communities. So yeah, it was a hearty discussion about e-scooters. So as Mary said, it's a platform. It's not e-bikes. It's a special type. There's been concerns, no helmets. It was referenced in the discussion. The region of Waterloo has a current bylaw that if staff wanted to look at it for reference, the region set it for the entire of all their municipalities. So that would be Woolwich, Wilmot, all of them. And it's one bylaw. Helmets are required. There's an age requirement to be able to use the trails in Waterloo region. So I'm not sure if Center Wellington can take on another bylaw for something to monitor like this. It would have to be definitely a council discussion. But I just wanted you to know it's been a thing on our trails, and I guess there's been issues. Last week was Poison Prevention Week, and it was brought to our attention that edibles are still an issue. Edible cannabis, chemicals are still an issue. We're seeing numbers with that. So they're asking edibles be high and locked, keeping chemicals high and locked, and not taking things, this was interesting, not taking things out of original packaging and putting them in different or pretty containers without labels. That's been a hazard for children as well. Coming up April 9th and 10th is the Drayton Farm Show. I attended it last year. It's pretty busy and there's a lot of good information if you have time. And that's about it for right now. And I will do an update on economic development if you want me to do that. We met last week. We talked about the Fergus Grand Theatre and had a really good overview done by one of our staff member, Kristen. And we talked about marketing, some different marketing schemes that could be used. Maybe doing some different things with the concession to make extra money. Everyone seemed happy to see youth camps, partnerships being brought forward. That was about it for that, for the theater. So the sponsorship piece was, there was a lot of comments about that. We talked about the STR bylaw and it was passed and it is sent back to council, and I believe I don't know if the minutes are in this agenda, maybe not. But the STR discussion was pretty hearty. There seemed to be a little bit of a theme about allowing people into their STR to check on things. But in the end, the bylaw was passed, what was put forward. So that will come to council at a future date. And that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McDonald. Anybody else would like to speak? Yes, Councillor Adams.
Thank you. I do want to give an update. I just actually had a quick question to Councillor McDonald. Did the committee get an update about our business park, and is there some pending opportunities there? Yeah. Okay. That's good.
There was 4 applications for a business park. We don't know what those are. George is looking after that, our manager, George. There's 4 letters of intent that was brought forward. And also we had a discussion about alternative spaces for healthcare. Thank you for reminding me.
No, thank you. Thanks so much.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Through you, Mayor. Sorry. I was going to say we did have our Groves board meeting right after the end of the month. The big thing was the scanner, which Angela just told us about, which was very exciting. And then in our, you want to do, okay. And then at our last Healthy Communities meeting, Adam gave an update on the Active Transportation and Mobility Master Plan, which was followed by our public information night on March 4th. Ian had presented the Water Conservation Annual Report that had been recently reviewed by council here. Pat, I think you gave an update about a user group storage agreement for facilities. Casey was present and gave a presentation on the Bellwood Hall renovation, with lots of planned improvements to accessibility there, with planned completion of April 2026. The big one of the night, which we will also speak about later, is the Community Investment Fund recipients and working groups. So I'll leave that to Kristen to present. I think Bronwyn and myself and everybody in that committee, I think, was just saying like how well that working group did to making improvements in, you know, the rating and just the whole process of being able to go through in that working group and selecting the grants. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's been lots of work in the past, and although still a big job, I think it was really manageable and I think brought great results. So really great work by our staff there. And then I think Kristen ended the night with also the same presentation that was at Economic Development on our Fergus Grand Theatre operations. So it was great.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. I noticed your hand there, Councillor Evoy. Do you have a question, or you were going to?
No, I'm just going to do my report when time permits.
Okay, I'll just go look around if there's questions related to this. So, Councillor McDonald?
In the HCAC meeting, did you talk about Middlebrook Bridge at all in the active transportation plan? Was there a discussion, do you know?
I don't think there was any discussion.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any
further questions? Councillor Welton?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Waters. Just a point of clarification for Councillor McDonald. I guess when you say the short-term rental bylaw passed, it wasn't passed by council. So I just want to clarify that for anybody watching, that it was just that the committee discussed it and we'll be sending it back to council for our deliberations. So thank you.
I'm sorry, I thought I said the committee passed the bylaw to go forward to council, but okay.
Yeah, it was an endorsement. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Councillor Evoy, are you ready to do your presentation?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, sir. Through you, the quick one to talk about, although with a full heart, to talk about Farm Safety Committee. We hosted the pancake breakfast on March 1st, and it was a huge success, as is always the way when Farm Safety gets behind projects here in our community. We saw hundreds of people coming for free pancakes and sausages, and lots of community members were there. We saw Safe Communities, OPP, fire, mental health and well-being, community safety, so many things that were there representing our community was so well represented there. So huge thanks to the committee that I'm honored to sit on, which is Farm Safety. Also a reminder, we've got the next farm show in Drayton on April 9th and 10th, and we invite everybody to come out and join us for that. Again, continual and consistent great success.
Thank you, Councillor Evoy. Any further comments, questions, any more committees, information? Okay, well, thank you, Council, for your updates. So we'll move down to item 6, delegations. None. And then item 7, consent items. Consent agenda items are considered routine in nature and voted on collectively. However, any member of council may request one or more items to be removed from the council agenda for separate actions. And I'll just read the recommendation here. Recommendation that the Council of Township of Central Wellington approve consent agenda items 7.1 through to 7.7. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor Evoy, any further comments or questions? Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, and through you. Question regarding report number 7.4, the Fergus and Elora Wastewater Treatment Plant Performance Reports and Consolidated Linear Infrastructure Annual Reports. I just was curious, I saw in the report there was by a number of bypass issues at the Fergus wastewater treatment plant in 2024, which were reported on and say they've been adequately kind of addressed in that. I was just wondering if staff could discuss a little bit in more detail what the potential impact is on water quality in the river and drinking water impacts on communities downstream who use the river for drinking water. So just curious, and if the repairs have been, if we have adequately addressed them for permanent kind of solutions there.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilton, for the question. And through the mayor, if I could, I'll bring Jerry Atkinson, our manager of wastewater, to the podium to provide some additional details on those bypass events.
Thank you for the questions. We did have 5 bypasses, and from December 2023 into 2024. All these bypasses were related to sand filter mechanical issues that we had. Since that point in time, we've actually changed the sand out, done a lot of mechanical upgrades, rebuilds on the sand filter hoods themselves. Of these 5 bypasses, what I like to say is, like, when it comes to a bypass, a lot of people right off the bat think it's sewage going into the river. And where we get into a tertiary treatment bypass, it's a secondary treatment. So the wastewater has pretty much been treated at that point in time. We have tertiary filters, or those sand filters, that actually polish that wastewater that we're putting into their receiving stream. The wastewater during that time, from December all the way to August, when the last one occurred, the wastewater was below our objectives for our limits. So there was no impact on the effluent quality leaving the plant. So since then, we've actually addressed all the issues as it was ongoing. We could find a couple different issues that we addressed. I've implemented a preventive maintenance plan where we actually go in every 6 months. We clean the filters. We do some sort of super chlorinating. So that plan's been in place since then. And just to kind of note, we had that big melt. The flows went right through the roof. The wastewater treatment plant, no bypass. The filters are in great conditions, and that they operated as they should have done. So, yeah.
Nope. Follow up.
Thank you very much for that additional information. I appreciate that. My other question was the use of the LISTEC, or LISTEC. Forget how you pronounce it. We only use it in Elora, not in Fergus. I was just curious, is that because of the way the systems operate, or is there an opportunity to maybe implement LISTEC at Fergus as well?
There's absolutely an opportunity to use a LISTEC or some kind of biosolids management at the Fergus wastewater treatment plant. Just kind of give it in context, the Elora wastewater treatment plant was upgraded in 2012, and they actually had, the plant before that had the same operation as Fergus has currently. Right now, we are on the review of the wastewater master plan, which will address any capacity issues that we have moving. Be a potential, yes, we use a LISTEC operation there. The last upgrade at Fergus was done in 2000, 25 years ago. So at that point in time, the capacity, for instance, I'm just going to go throw some numbers out, was 120 days to be able to capacity over 120 days. We're right now at 55 days. So that's where our capacity is. So definitely there will be some kind of recommendations through that master plan about moving forward, how we actually upgrade the wastewater treatment plant at Fergus to accommodate that biosolids management.
Great. Just wanted to thank you for the additional information. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for either Colin or Jerry? Thank you very much for that. And so we have a mover and a seconder on that, and all those in favor, so move. Okay, we'll move down to item consideration of reports. Community Investment Fund recipient recommendations. A report from Kristen. Welcome.
Thank you. All right. The Community Investment Fund is put in place to provide financial assistance to enhance the quality of life in the Township of Centre Wellington by fostering, strengthening, and stimulating wider community appreciation and participation in the community. This is just a review of the process that we took this year, which was tweaked a little bit by the working group and the recommendations that they had. So applications were open for a month and due by January 15th. Staff did initial review to confirm the eligibility and appropriate funding streams. The working group met to agree on a process, validate ineligible applications, and reviewed and scored the eligible applications on their own. Then the working group reconvened to discuss scores and recommend award levels. The working group used a scoring tool that focused on the following criteria: the alignment with council's strategic plan, the level of community need and impact, the project feasibility and readiness, collaborations and partnerships, sustainability, diversity, equity, inclusion, and the evaluation and measurement of success. There were 8 ineligible applications that were non-compliant with the policy for various reasons. Some were that grants cannot be awarded to individuals according to section 2.5.4. Funds cannot be used to host an event that is fundraising focused, 2.6.6. Funds cannot be awarded to benefit a for-profit or individual, 2.5.1. And also the capital stream was removed from the program, so capital projects will not be considered for funding. For the annual specific stream, this funding has already been awarded to the group, and council approved that in the 2025 budget deliberations. So before we get into the details of the funding allocations, we just wanted to take a moment to address an important recommendation from the Community Investment Fund Working Group. The Community Investment Fund Working Group has recommended several key changes to how the township allocates support to community groups that create community impactful initiatives. And one of the most significant is a strong discouragement of stacking, where an organization receives multiple forms of support, both financial and in kind, from the township. They also proposed a $5,000 cap per initiative. And the goal here was to ensure that support is spread to as many organizations as possible while maintaining fairness across the board. That being said, on March 3rd, the Healthy Communities Advisory Committee passed the following resolution: that the Healthy Communities Advisory Committee support a one-time contribution to the Fergus Agricultural Society and the Fergus Scottish Festival over and above the support that they already received from the township as outlined in HCAC 2025-02. As you see in the attached document in your package, both of those organizations already received discounts on facility rentals, storage solutions on township property, and now it's recommended for financial support. However, their applications still scored highly with the working group because long-standing traditions, but also significant cultural cornerstones of our community. They have also demonstrated their capacity to sustain and grow for decades. The Community Impact Stream. This funding stream supports initiatives that address local challenges through innovative, locally driven solutions. The focus is on projects that have a direct and meaningful impact on the lives of Centre Wellington community members. By fostering grassroots efforts and empowering local organizations, this stream aims to create lasting positive change and strengthen the fabric of our community. Whether through social services, environmental initiatives, or educational programs, the Community Impact Stream is committed to making a tangible difference where it matters most. Applicants could apply for up to $5,000. There are 18 eligible applications. The recommendation is to fund to some degree 16 of these. The total funding request in this stream was $81,102, and the limit to award was $56,500. This is the Arts and Culture Festivals and Events stream. So this funding stream supports initiatives that enrich our local community and possibly attract visitors to boost the local economy. The focus is on events, creative projects, arts-based programs that showcase our cultural heritage, and cultural heritages, promote diversity, and enhance community engagement. By supporting a vibrant arts and culture scene, this stream fosters cultural appreciation and drives economic growth through increased tourism and local participation. Again, groups could apply for up to $5,000. There are 16 eligible applications. The recommendation is to fund to some degree 15 of them. The total funding requested in this stream was very similar to the last, $80,983. The limit to award on this stream was also $56,500. And this stream is also where the two initiatives live for special consideration. With a $23,150 investment for annual specifics and $56,500 for both community impact stream and arts, culture, festival, and event stream, that totals $136,150 investment to local groups to continue to do the great work that they are doing to make Centre Wellington an active, caring, innovative, safe, and connected community. The funded initiatives are actively creating the condition for economic prosperity. They're improving the activity, health, and wellness in the community. They're helping to keep the community's unique character while growth is happening. Many of the initiatives are finding ways to be sustainable environmentally. And finally, we heard in applications how group are also striving for their own sustainability in innovative ways to be able to create opportunities for our future needs. Part of the renaming of this funding opportunity to the Community Investment Fund was to recognize the ways that council supports local groups. For some groups, there are financial investments through reduced fees in the rates and fees bylaw, but all applicants have access to some other very valuable resources that are here for them and to support their success. So the calendar of events is on the township's main webpage and gets over 3,000 clicks in peak months. The township has a cultural resource center that has tables, tents, pylons, the water cart, and so much more. And this is for groups that are planning events on township property to access at low cost. The township has a staff person who is here to support groups planning events, to make sure that they're abiding by the different bylaws, getting the permits that are needed, and have the proper insurance to keep them protected. The township hosted a volunteer fair and will do it again on May 6th. The goal is to connect to the community with the many meaningful volunteer roles that are available to them. There's also an events guide to support groups on our website. The community development coordinator is connecting with event planners with that tool as well to set them up for success. Any questions?
Thank you, Kristen. I see Councillor Evoy there.
Thank you so much through you, sir. Honestly, Kristen, I can't really see you very well, but I heard you and I heard your passion, and I cannot possibly thank you enough. This is what I believe this council stands for, working with and for our community in new and exciting ways. And you and the committee, by the way, HCAC, great job doing this in creative ways that suggests we're truly listening to the people of our community, and I love it. With regards to the special allowances made for the Fergus Scottish Festival and Ag Society, I couldn't agree more. Very grateful to hear that this is how this landed. Both positively affect our community, but also are really great economic generators with regards to paying for volunteer time and having local businesses have booths there. So I would be much more behooved if I didn't see that. My question is around how we're doing around getting new applicants, people that we don't see every year. I know that's been one of your real main goals. How are we doing around that?
For you, Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to report that there were a number of new applicants, or even applicants that have been there in the past, but doing new things and kind of evolving to the landscape of the community now, and not doing the same old thing every time, but really looking at what is needed and responding to that. So I can definitely report back on that.
Amazing. Thanks again. And once again, thanks around the Scottish Festival with their big year coming up this year. Really excited to see that we're able to support them both. Thanks.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. I noticed in the data, so the working group for Fergus Ag Society recommends council support over and above the 5,000 level, and the same with the Fergus Scottish Festival.
Right.
Do we have the ability to do that then?
You're the only ones that have the ability to do that.
So I would like to make a recommendation to do that, and would welcome a discussion here at the table. I don't know what went on at the committee for that, but maybe you can shed light.
Through Mayor Waters, the way Kristen has structured this report, if council approves the resolution for the report, you're in effect approving that extra funding for those two organizations. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further comments, questions as it relates to Kristen for board? Okay, I'm going to read the recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington approves a community investment fund allocation as recommended by the Healthy Communities Advisory Committee as attached in recipient recommendation 2025 to report CS 2025-02. Do I have a mover on that? Councillor Wilton, do a seconder on that. Councillor Evoy, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you very much for the report. We're going to move down to item 8.2, asset management levels of service framework. And we welcome to lectern Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. And through you, I'll contextualize the report a little bit and then turn it over to the Township's consulting team, who is engaged to facilitate the development of a framework being contemplated this evening. Levels of service as a concept is one of the most important outcomes of the Township's asset management planning practices. This is a requirement and also requires an intimate knowledge of the services and service levels provided by the Township and balances service level benefits, risks, and costs associated with providing the services to residents and businesses that we do. OREG 58817 is the overarching legislation for asset management reporting, and it requires an update to the existing asset management plan by July 1st of 2025 that enhances our existing levels of service framework to demonstrate current levels of service, establish levels of service targets for the future, the financial implications of implementing the target levels of service, and the risks associated with not meeting the target levels. The team at SLBC Inc. was engaged to facilitate workshops and community engagement, develop a level of service framework that would be compliant with OREG 58817, and to provide long-term service delivery target setting for the Township. They are here this evening to present the results of their work. Additionally, staff are seeking council direction to leverage the results of this engagement for the purposes of updating the asset management plan for the Township. And with that, I'll turn it over to Eric at SLBC to run through his presentation, and Amin from SLBC is also here to field and support any questions the council may have.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for the discussions that we've had over the course of the last couple of months as well. So a quick overview on the discussion this evening. Quick overview on the project before we get started. We'll review the proposed level of service framework that we developed with the Township staff and talk about some outcomes from the project and then next steps. Where are we taking this going forward? How are we including this work into the asset management plan for the Township to meet the Ontario regulatory requirements? So we developed a levels of service framework to inform, as Adam said, the 2025 asset management plan to be compliant with the Ontario regulatory requirements for asset management. This included 3 different phases for the work. The first one looked at the levels of service framework that the Township currently uses. Based on the work that we've done with many other municipalities in Ontario, the asset management framework that is currently being used is really, really positive. The way that you have been doing asset management is really, really good overall. We just identified a couple improvement opportunities to help it be more functional and more effective to help translate the information that staff are trying to translate to you as the ultimate decision makers for budgets and allocating dollars to infrastructure and assets over the long term. The second phase looked at the community engagement strategy. So we developed a community engagement strategy and then we executed that strategy. And the strategy looked at 4 different components. First was stakeholder awareness. This engaged staff on the service by service area where we understood their perspective of levels of service. How are they using it in their job and what kind of areas can it be improved going forward? We did a community survey. We received feedback back from the community on levels of service, experience from residents and their willingness to pay for those services. We did one-on-one sessions with all of you councillors, which were very informative as well to hear from what you're hearing from your constituents and use that information to inform decision-making in the future. And then we had a community event in October where we gathered more feedback from the community in more of a personal setting where they were able to provide feedback to us directly in the town open house. The third phase looked at the proposed level of service and the implementation plan. So this is where we did workshops with staff service areas, often for a couple hours, where we set those proposed levels of service. And then we really tried to identify what are the costs required to meet those service targets over the next 10 years. And that's the focus of this work, is we're trying to identify what is the service level targets for the next 10 years and what are the costs associated with that. We developed a graphic to help describe the process for setting levels of service, and it's included in the package today as well. The intention of that is really to help market the levels of service approach overall. So this can be used by staff to market the approach to residents, to help them explain how this process works, how are levels of service being set, and the targets overall. And then we developed an implementation plan for the levels of service framework so that staff can take the information that we've developed so far and move it forward, integrate it into their workflows, and then to support the annual reporting that will be coming back to you through the asset management planning approach. So the levels of service framework overall, what we're trying to do with this levels of service framework is to draw alignment from the corporate priorities all the way through to the long-term capital and operating plans that are being developed for managing the town's infrastructure. The focus of this work was really in that middle section in the phase 3, where we were identifying measures related to capacity, to function, to quality, and affordability. And the questions that we were answering with staff were at the capacity level, what measures do we track when we want to grow? So we're trying to identify really what are the core measures that we look at when we're trying to identify the growth and the expansion of township assets. At the function level, we're answering the question, what measures do we track when we want to improve the performance overall? Health and safety, environmental, or accessibility? What are we measuring when we're trying to identify investments related to those types of decisions? And then at the quality level, what measures are we tracking when we want to replace or renew? And these are directly related to investments would be related to renewal or operations or maintenance decision-making. And then at the affordability level, what measures do we track when we want to review the financial sustainability of our decision-making overall? And the intention of this framework is to provide a clear structure so that when we're measuring these various metrics, we have clear alignment between what's being measured and what's being invested in at the township. So this is the marketing graphic that we developed as part of this work, really to try and clarify what the township provides as far as services along the top of the graphic. And this sets the stage for what we did to set those levels of service targets. So we took things like council direction from the one-on-one discussions with yourselves. We took community feedback through the survey and through the event. We took at staff engagement, understanding what staff are hearing. We looked at legislative requirements, making sure that the targets are aligning with the Ontario regulatory requirements. We looked at the strategic direction for the township. So what is being developed in the various strategic plans for the different service areas. And then ultimately all of this comes together in balancing the constraints. So there's limited financial resources, there's limited personnel resources, and we're trying to look at those target decisions through that lens as well. So we looked at setting these targets. These targets are being set to really inform that 10-year capital and operating plan, which gives clear understanding of what are the costs required to meet those target levels of service that have been identified. And the intention, what's required as per the Ontario regulation, is that annually you'll get a report from staff reporting on the performance of those levels of service targets. And then you'll see the adjustment to the 10-year capital and operating plan based on how those measures are performing over time. You'll be able to see and track the historical performance of those measures over time, which you'll be able to see the impact of the investments on those levels of service. So as far as outcomes from the project, this is a high-level summary of some of the costing or the financial impacts of these discussions that we had with taking all of those 6 different components together. Just want to note that the detailed costing will be concluded in the asset management plan, which will come through in probably June for your approval. These are more high-level costs. These are going to be discussed with township staff and kind of finalized over the next few months. But the high-level takeaway really is that based on the strategic direction and the population growth in the township, the expectation is that about $10.1 million would be spent related to growth of existing infrastructure. So things like building new parks, building new roads, adding new water, wastewater for new subdivisions, that type of thing. As far as upgrades, these are investments into improving accessibility, improving environmental performance, improving health and safety of existing township assets. These are averaging out to about $2.5 million a year just to improve the overall performance. And what we want to highlight as well is that the operations and maintenance costing required for these assets, we project that those types of costs, the operations and maintenance costs, should be increasing with the expansion of the asset portfolio. So if we're thinking about a total dollars in assets and we're adding $10 million a year, that's a 1% increase in the overall asset portfolio. So ideally, your operations and maintenance budgets should be increasing at 1% as well, so that you're operating and maintaining those assets at an effective portfolio. As well, we want to highlight that as these new assets are brought online, the township should be incorporating the renewal and replacement of these assets into the long-term financial plan so that we don't end up in a situation where in 20 years, all of these assets need to be redone and they weren't in that long-term financial plan. So we didn't have an idea of what was required. So ideally, that's the intention of this, is that these assets, as they're brought online, they get integrated into the asset management plan approach so that there's a clear understanding of the financial needs of those assets over the course of their entire life cycle. The other component of this discussion was around rehabilitation and replacement, and this is a really important component of asset management as a whole. So there's 2 different costs listed here: maintaining the existing level of service, averaging out to about $23.5 million a year, to maintain the existing level of condition of the assets that the township owns and operates currently. And the other scenario there is proposed level of service. So this is related to the discussions that we've had, balancing all of the constraints or the factors coming into play in discussions with township staff around proposed levels of service and the targets that are being set. So you'll see that there is a difference between those 2 values, a higher cost related to the proposed level of service scenario. And just to describe what that means and how that works, what I've shown on the screen here is a sample deterioration curve for a sampled asset. So if you think about a piece of infrastructure, for the majority of its life, it's in relatively good condition. And then it reaches a point where you can see the green turns to yellow, where it rapidly deteriorates. So ideally, when you're investing in your infrastructure, you want to find that optimal point of investment. You spend the money to improve that asset. You don't need to spend as much to improve it to a better condition. What this is telling us is that over the next 10 years, to optimally invest in our infrastructure, we need to spend a little bit more on an annual basis in order to reduce the overall life cycle costs of our assets. If we're maintaining that existing level of service, we're allowing the assets to deteriorate, leading to some short-term cost savings, but then over the long run, that's going to lead to additional costs to maintain and operate and renew and rehabilitate those assets over the long run. As far as some risks to this type of work, we identified a couple different risks related to growth, upgrade, and rehabilitation and replacement. So the first one is risks to not funding the growth of those proposed levels of service scenarios that we talked about. Infrastructure shortfalls. This can lead to overcrowded roads, at-capacity utilities, and overstretched fire services, leading to an overall lower quality of life. Some challenges with businesses potentially avoiding township due to inadequate infrastructure, which can limit the job growth or economic activity. If there's not supporting infrastructure, this can limit the ability to provide additional housing to the township, which can make the township less affordable. Some of the risks with not funding the upgrade levels of service is outdated infrastructure can lead to inefficiency, which can lead to higher costs, environmental and health and safety impacts. Other municipalities are spending money into these upgrades, so it could attract businesses or residents away from the municipality. And this could run the risk of not meeting the corporate priorities, things like environmental goals, legal and regulatory requirements, or accessibility goals overall. Some of the challenges or risks to not funding the rehabilitation and replacement levels of service. When you have aging systems, they can fail, which can cause service disruptions, which are unplanned. And this can lead to potential safety risks, or it can lead to additional costs when you're not maintaining things on a consistent schedule. This could potentially limit future investment from businesses as they don't have confidence in the infrastructure and its performance to provide them with their services. Now, I have this big red line along the bottom, and this is all about trade-offs. So township staff are aware of these risks, and on an annual basis, they're reviewing all of the projects that are coming through, and they're evaluating trade-offs. Can we move a project from 2025 to 2026 and see the impact of that on the overall performance? They're constantly doing this type of analysis. So just that is to give you some confidence that these types of discussions are happening overall to balance the overall risk that the township could be holding when we have a limited amount of money to be spent on this type of infrastructure. So just to flag that is happening overall, that there are trade-offs happening when you're looking at investing in infrastructure like this. So some next steps as far as this work. So we'll be submitting our final report to township staff and incorporating any feedback that we receive from yourselves today. And then the township will use these insights to finalize the asset management plan over the next few months. And that will include a financing strategy to address some of the needs that have been identified in this project. So they'll be presenting that to you around how does this actually get funded over the course of the next 10 years. And then staff will present the asset management plan for your approval before the July 1st deadline of this year to meet the Ontario regulatory requirement. So appreciate your attention, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. Questions, comments from council? I see Councillor Evoy.
Thank you so much, through you, sir. Thanks for that great presentation. I wrote that I'm not sure that the concept of paying a little bit more to protect our assets is a terribly new one, but it's definitely necessary. And having a report that is as fulsome and as well informed as this report is helps us to both get around it and to help explain to our constituents and to our neighbors why we need to do this. So for that note, I really appreciate the work that went into this report. Just curious, is there some sort of a setup to follow the path of this journey, i.e. which comes first, which goes second, what we've saved? So that's not just for this council, but moving forward and looking ahead. Will we follow one format so we can see how this journey follows through?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the intention of the levels of service framework, is that you can see the historical performance of the measures that are being tracked over time, and you'll be able to see the investments that are being made, and you'll intentionally be able to see the performance impact of those investments on the measures. So that's the intention, is to have that transition, I think, as we discussed in the one-on-one overall, so you can see that transition from council term to council term.
Excellent. Thanks again, guys. You did a great job.
Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Through you, excuse me. Thank you very much for the presentation. I agree with my colleague that I find this very logical and very helpful. It's a really good overarching way to look at levels of service and to be able to help explain to people why we need to do this. I think it's intuitively makes sense, but it's nice to have it all laid out. I had two questions. The first one kind of follows up on the previous comment by my colleague. In the framework, so the one with your slide with the boxes kind of that flows through. On the first side, on the left side, I guess you'd call it, is the strategic plan. And then you follow through with all the other components. So I'm just curious, over time in your experience, if a new council were to come in the next election time and they drastically change, let's hope they don't, but just for argument's sake, how challenging is it to kind of adjust that long-term metrics and being able to understand and track that performance over time if, for example, the new council says, oh, we don't care about environment anymore, and they take that out? And so have you had the experience with how you can maybe kind of adjust for those types of changes within that level of service framework?
Sure. Through the mayor to the councillor, the levels of services are not meant to be static. So the idea is this framework is focused on service level objectives that you're really going to concentrate on over the next 5 to 10 years. So things like the condition of the infrastructure, the new council may want to improve it or underinvest in certain areas, or they might have other strategic priorities around greenhouse gas emissions and other targets. So generally speaking, the AM plan needs to be updated every 5 years. And that's when you would kind of look at and review your existing suite of levels of services.
Yeah, and follow up? All right, my slightly different question. And so in the, you do talk about the level staffing needed to keep this up to date and kind of keep it evolved over time. I'm just curious about the capacity. Is that in-house capacity to keep that up to date, and it's just incorporated into what we currently have in our staffing rate to be able to do that? Or is this going to require more staffing to manage this type of framework? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Wilton, and through you, Mayor Waters. I think the intent initially is to manage this process and the implementation plan. I think you're referring to the kind of that 2-year plan with the up to 1,350 hours. The intent would be to manage that with in-house staff. We do have kind of dedicated asset management resources now, and we do have a GIS group that is growing to help facilitate some of this and move the needle on our maturity as it pertains to asset management. So with that, I would suggest that a lot of that is going to be managed in-house. But with that, as we see the growth numbers in terms of assessment growth and all that other good stuff, 50% of that is dedicated to kind of staff requirements. And that can be used to facilitate that. So any kind of growth related pressures could be facilitated through that. But initially, I think the intent is to manage it with internal staff resources.
Thank you. Slightly different approach, but I really appreciated your marketing graphic for the for explaining the whole concept. And I was just curious kind of what our staff in general think that there could be great opportunities to use that graphic and maybe even break it out more into little smaller components. You and I have discussed before, but a little more public engagement and plain language graphics with to allow better communication between us and the public regarding the budget, because during the budget we talk about asset management and the level of commitment we want to make investment in the asset management plan. So I'm just curious if might even be a question for the CAO in terms of how we might be able to take this marketing framework, that graphic that has been produced for this report, and maybe spin it out into a broader public engagement process as we get closer to budget time. Thank you.
Yep, thank you again.
Councillor Wilton, and through you, Mayor Waters. Yeah, the intent of the infographic that was developed as part of this process was to kind of drive some of that community engagement. Community engagement plays a large role, especially as we look to kind of the OREG requirements for the 2025 update, and that was kind of the rationale for bringing SLBC Inc. As part of this engagement. So we continue to move the needle and address that public consultation requirement, and we have designs on leveraging this graphic and others into the future as well.
Through Mayor Waters, and to add to what Adam just said, we are doing a community engagement strategy this year as well that will focus in on budget engagement as well as other engagement. And I think this is a good opportunity to utilize communication like this to communicate to our residents, and we can flush that out through that strategy.
I'll just, anybody else would like to speak to this moment? Okay, Councillor Wilton.
Just a quick comment to thank both of you from the consulting firm for SLBC. I thought this was a very clear report, and I really appreciated the one-on-one conversation we had a little while ago, whenever that was, and all of the community engagement you did. So I appreciate your efforts on this. It's really nice and clear and logical, which I like. Thanks.
Any other comments, questions? Yeah, no, definitely appreciate the report that way. I think it spells out, obviously this program was initiated at the province. I think it's a very good program that way, but it's also a scary program in the sense that it really identifies shortfalls within the community. And the more we can make the community aware of these shortfalls, because at some point these will come back to haunt our community, or make it extremely aware that in order for our plans to be sustainable, there's going to be a financial ask there. So it's a tough go. It's not only a tough go in our community, but a tough go of communities within the province. And it's also, I guess, an outcall to the province that, you know, with these asset management, there is some needs there, and we need cooperation, obviously within our communities, but cooperation from the province to help us out as we move forward to keep these assets in a good place. So I'll read the recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington endorse the draft levels of service framework as presented in Report Core 2025-10 and direct staff to utilize the framework for the purpose of drafting the 2025 Asset Management Plan update. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor Craddock, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you again, gentlemen. We'll move down to item 8.3, municipal endorsement of County of Wellington OPA 126, and welcome, Brett.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. This is a fairly large report in your package with lots of attachments, so I just want to walk you through my report and say where we are today. You may recall that in October, you received 2 reports from staff, one with our recommended settlement area boundary, and then a second one asking you to endorse that boundary. That was in late October. So council endorsed the staff recommended boundary. That information was given to the County of Wellington. They've turned it into an official plan amendment, OPA 126. That was released to the public in November of 2024. A deadline for comment from the government agencies that was in January of 2025. And then more recently, the counties held a virtual public open house on March the 3rd, and they held the statutory public meeting under the Planning Act on March 13th. So we're here today for council to provide its final endorsement of official plan amendment 126. And there's some changes that I want to go through. But I also just wanted to highlight all the attachments that you have in the report. So I've attached the county staff report on OPA 126. I've attached a comment table on the things that the county staff have asked for as a result of the input. The draft OPA 126 is included in your package. The county's public meeting presentation from March 13th, all the slides. A recommendation regarding a property that staff are recommending be added to the settlement area boundary that's not in OPA 126. And then my prior staff reports from last October are all in your package. But I'm going to turn my attention to the slides, and I like to start off with this one because it kind of illustrates that, as you know, the county put out a request from landowners to make it known that they wanted their land added to the urban boundary. So in this slide, you can see all the things that are hatched are where all the requests that the county received. And these are only the requests that were received up until that deadline, which I think was sometime in January of 2024. There have been additional requests that were made after this that aren't reflected on this map. So the hatching are all the requests. Red is the proposed urban boundary with OPA 126. And you can see obviously that the number of requests far exceeded the amount of land that we needed. I just thought it was important for that to be illustrated again. So here is the proposed boundaries. The county's made a couple of changes to the proposed boundary from where council endorsed the staff recommendation in October. There are some changes. So on this map, the Center Wellington recommendation is shaded in gray. And you can see there's areas A through G that are shaded in gray. And the county's proposed boundary in OPA 126 is outlined in red. So you can see on this map overall where some of those differences were made. And some of those result from when I presented in October, there were some submissions made about not including all of a parcel and leaving land fragmented. So that's the issue that we asked county staff to review with their agricultural impact consultants. And that's the main reason for these changes that the county's proposed. And the subsequent slides provide a little more detail. So in Fergus, you can see a focus on areas B and C. Area C, the gray, is the boundary that the township staff recommended and council adopted. And the red line is the change that the county has made. So you can see, if you look at there's a parcel that was removed altogether in favor of adding land to the south so that those parcels on the east side of Highway 6 are entirely included, instead of leaving part of them fragmented. And then you can see similarly on area B, the area that's been added to avoid fragmentation. So that includes the entire parcel of area B. And then you can see in Elora, area G is where the township boundary is the gray and the dash line. They've added a little bit more land to avoid that land fragmentation, which would potentially landlock an agricultural parcel, which is not desirable. And then the next slide shows the changes to the amount of land that are included in OPA 126. So this table illustrates that the first line, the county MCR phase 2 results. The community area that was needed was 238 hectares. The employment area needed was 160 hectares for a total of 398 hectares. After adjusting for the township's approval of the South Fergus secondary plan, which took some land that was intended originally for employment purposes and made it community, reduce the community need to 204 hectares, and then increase the employment need to 194. So still needing 398 hectares. And then if you recall, the township retained Watson and Associates to look at different recommendations for reducing the needed amount of land by increasing the greenfield density. And that resulted in a reduction of the community area to a total of 132 hectares. The employment area wasn't affected. So again, the total amount of land is reduced to 326 hectares. So that's what council recommended in October. With the adjustments that the county has made, the community area has increased up to 169 hectares. So you can see they added 37 hectares of land. And the employment area increased by 1 hectare. So it's 195. So the total is 364. So, but this illustrates that the changes still are less than the county's original calculated need, which would have been 204. So council can still say that as a result of its scenario 3, we've reduced the impact on the prime agricultural land by the difference between 204 and 169. So township staff support the changes that were made by the county here. They are reflective of the council discussion and the concern that was raised about fragmenting the ag parcels. And the county's consultant for the agricultural impact assessment advised that it was better for the entire parcel to be retained. So staff support those changes. I have a few other slides that relate to some things that are in the table. That's the first attachment to my report, and I want to use these slides just to explain. One of the other mapping pieces that the county has done in OPA 126, they have a schedule in their official plan that identifies land that has aggregate resource potential. So there's sand and gravel in the ground. Some of the land in South Fergus has that aggregate potential there. The county's OPA 126 proposes that they have a practice where land that's in an urban boundary doesn't, they remove that from the schedule. So that's what they're doing here. Their land in Area C and Area B has the aggregate resource overlay on it, and the OPA 126 would remove it from the schedule. So one of the things in my comments is to say that township staff agrees and council should support removing the aggregate resource there. But I should point out, county did receive a comment from the Ontario Stone, Sand and Gravel Association wishing it would stay in. But the county's does this throughout the county where there's ag potential that comes out of the urban schedule. I think, and it's not to say that the aggregate couldn't be extracted. And in this area, in particular in South Fergus, Area C, the future land use is intended to be employment. And so, you know, for example, the extraction could occur before the actual development happened or as part of the employment development. Another point that the county has asked or it's addressed in my report, you can see the area that's highlighted in blue, the dashed line, was a community planning study area that was added to the county OP back in 2005 when the township last expanded the urban boundary. And so through the intervening years where we have the growth plan with its entire set of policies dealing with urban expansion and study requirements, the county's developed the Wellington Place campus. We believe that the community planning study area, or the county believes that it's no longer necessary. So OPA 126 proposes to remove it. The county has received some feedback from some of the landowners within it that they would rather it stay. And so the county asks, in my report, I'm saying that the township has no objection to removing it altogether. I do agree that it's redundant at this point in time, and there's no reason for it to continue. But the county's reviewing all the correspondence. It is possible that they may conclude to keep it, in which case I don't think that's really a big deal either. But my recommendation to this council is that we say that we don't object to this being removed. And then, sorry, this slide is the wrong direction, but I do make a recommendation in my report that the subject property that's outlined in blue, which is 264 First Line, just outside Elora, it's on the east side of Gilkison. We are recommending that it be added to the Elora-Salem settlement boundary. It's a bit of a unique property. There was historically a Plan 88, which is the plan for the village of Aboyne, and it goes on both sides of the river, on the north and the south side. And on the south side of the river, just about all of the land except this block is already in the urban boundary. So we have it's just under 7 hectare parcel. It's got a farmhouse and greenhouses on it, has potential to be divided for like low density, unserviced development, which is the same as everything that surrounds it. So from our point of view, it doesn't impact the land need calculations if this small parcel gets added to the urban boundary, and we don't intend to extend services to that area, and it would be consistent with the rest of the area surrounding it. And all but a couple of parcels that already have houses are already, as I said, are already in the urban boundary, and that's kind of shown on the map. So we're recommending this property be included. We may have recommended it be included prior, but unfortunately under the old growth plan, we couldn't add land to the urban boundary unless it was serviced. So when I reported in October, we were kind of in this, we can't add this land because it's not to be serviced. But now that we have the changes to the provincial policy statement, it's within policy that we could add land to the urban boundary, even though we don't intend to extend municipal services to it. So if council agrees with this recommendation, the county would consider it, adding this land to OPA 126. And then in a future update of the township official plan, we would say that municipal services were not available to this property. So it has a minor, like maybe it's enough for 10 lots at the most. So we don't think it has any consequential impact on the land needs. So we're recommending that it be added. That's it for the slides, but I just want to go through a few other things that I've commented in on my comment table. We've asked in the draft OPA 126, county talks about our greenfield density target being 55 people and jobs per hectare. And I've pointed out in the report that as a result of scenario 3, the overall greenfield density target is actually 52 people and jobs per hectare, not 55. And that there's a separate future land added to the urban boundary greenfield target that is 56 people and jobs in Fergus and 53 people and jobs per hectare in Elora. So as part of my report, if council accepts it, we'd be asking the county to make that change. The county's also included a policy that deals with the phasing of future growth. And so section 3.6 talks about local municipalities in the county will identify the logical and timely extension and sequencing of growth in designated greenfield areas. That could be accomplished by a secondary plan, an amendment to the township or the county OP, or a council-approved growth management and phasing plan, which certainly the township intends to bring that kind of document forward. And we think it's important for the township to support that logical and orderly extension of growth that's supported by our own financial plans. And so we are recommending that council indicate to the county that we support that policy. As is, there's been some developer comments that they should be able to make their own applications and be kind of in charge of when they go ahead. But we think it's important for the township to be in the driver's seat on that as the provider of the municipal services. There's a proposed policy regarding urban development adjacent to prime ag land, which requires, enables the municipality to ask for an agricultural impact assessment. And again, the county has asked specifically, we're suggesting that we agree with that policy. And further, that we've identified through the AIA that there are some livestock operations that may be impacted by the land that's added to the urban boundary in South Fergus and South Elora. So the recommendation is the county should add a policy that allows the minimum distance to calculation to be reduced so that those livestock operations in the future can continue to expand, even though there's urban development coming closer. Again, county community planning study area, we agree with that being removed. And I think that covers all the things that the county had asked us to look at. So that is it for my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brett. Comments, questions for Brett? Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Through you. Lots of work here, Brett. I appreciate the report. Just following up on one of your last comments there about Article 10 and requesting that we add a policy for relief from MDS2. So I know you specifically referenced South Fergus there, and I know there's a bunch of like chicken barns expansions and stuff happening in that area. That's kind of what we're talking about here, right? Because I know I'm already getting kind of complaints from residents in terms of that as they continue to expand, not like the current existing ones, but concerns that they're going to continue to expand towards that urban center. So that's what this would allow?
This policy is not directed at those, but the AIA identified specific barns where we're coming quite close to them on the fringes of the area, Area G and Area C and Fergus in particular. So there are specific things that were noted. Those barns that you're asking about are not part of it. So, and the county's intention is to name the specific operations, not just make it general.
Councillor McDonald?
To you, Mayor Waters. Can you clarify C for me? Just so I see it outlined in red. Hang on, this is a very long report and very thorough. So it's outlined in red, little bit of gray, Center Wellington recommendation. And we had discussed that before.
Lisa's just going to call up the map again.
And then, so what's in the stripe, or the diagonal stripe, that's what we're requesting. Not the complete red outline.
Yeah, it is the red outline. I'll just see in Fergus. Is that,
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm at
so
C.
South. So this is perfect. South Fergus.
Yeah.
The gray area that has the dashed black outline in it.
Yeah.
Is the original
request.
Center Wellington proposed boundary.
Correct.
And the red is the county's proposed boundary. So the effect is that the parcel, you can see that's outside the red on the left-hand side, will no longer be in the urban boundary. And just so council, that's the Lindsay's farm where we have the battery energy storage.
Okay.
And then on the east side of Highway 6, those parcels, the area that's kind of between the dashed gray area and the red, that's the land that the county is adding to compensate for the removal of the Lindsay farm, and to ensure that the entirety of those parcels is included with no fragmentation. And again, that results in 1 hectare more employment land than what was proposed.
I'm not loving that. I'm just going to put that out there bring it forward here. I'm okay with this scenario. I'm not okay with the whole red line. I think that that's preemptive of the battery storage that we haven't even been able to talk about yet. So it's like putting the cart before the horse, really. So I think.
Sorry if I could answer. It doesn't really have anything to do with the battery energy storage. The battery energy storage is an application that keeps it out of the urban boundary anyways. But the issue with including that parcel is it's the agricultural impact assessment for the urban boundary expansion. That would be the highest impact for that parcel to be included, because in order to get the numbers to work, we didn't include all of the parcel. So the barn was going to stay outside the boundary, the current barn on that farm, and therefore it would have had a huge MDS impact on the land inside the boundary. So the changes that the county is proposing to make are entirely in the service of reducing the agricultural impact. So that's why the 1 parcel was removed altogether in favor of adding the complete parcels on the other side of Highway 6.
While you're contemplating that, Councillor Adams.
Well, I think it is a very complex situation, and I think it's complex for us, let alone when public are listening in. So can we just confirm, for the proposed development of the battery storage, which is currently outside of this current recommendation before us, what type of land planning changes would need to be made to approve that type of development? Is that things that we're seeing kind of like in Article 6?
The specific approvals required for the battery energy storage are, they've made application for a county official plan amendment, and they've made application for a township zoning bylaw amendment.
Okay.
So the change in OPA 126 has no bearing on that application.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, through you. Just with the adjustment for the new parcel, that's the Elora settlement area on the first line, the layout of it has the fragmentation around it, but it's not like it's an individual parcel and then those are separate properties. Like, would it be better for us to include the entirety of that, I guess, concession instead of just that particular property itself?
Well, I think the argument in favor of us adding this parcel is all of the other parcels, except for a handful, are already included. And that they were added to the urban boundary the last time we expanded the urban boundary. They had been in a designation in the county plan previously called country residential. And so nearly all those parcels are actually already in the urban boundary, except for that one. It's sort of like a circle in the middle. There might be 2 or 3 other parcels right on the corner of First Line and Gilkison that have houses on them that aren't in. So that would be something we could go back to the county and say, well, maybe you should just include all of it, because you can see from the report they've done a few other rounding out of including additional parcels. So we can let the county know that they could consider that. Obviously, the county's working on an official plan amendment. They're getting comments back all the time, and I think township staff are going to get asked my professional opinion of what they make changes that are not all going to be able to come back to council for endorsement in the time that the county anticipates that it's going to bring this in terms of policy changes in particular. But so certainly we can ask that question. I agree, it does make sense to just have the whole block. It's nearly all already in it.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Just further to the hatch line, this we knew then when it was here earlier and then went back to the county that there was going to probably be some adjustments made, and those extensions were just sort of a natural extensions of those properties, and it just made sense. I think what staff was trying to do here was to keep to the letter of the law in terms of the amount of land we wanted to bring. Obviously, we wanted to preserve the agricultural piece, but it didn't make sense to have these chunks sort of be cut in half and not be included. So I think there was a logic here that made sense. I will say this for both county and the local, we've worked extremely hard together in terms of getting where we are right now, and appreciating the fact that we are trying to preserve the agricultural piece. But I think it's been a lot of work, and this has been a tremendous effort on behalf of county and local staff to deal with this, and obviously the input of council on this. This has been a big program, and it's taken a lot of effort, and it's an amazing thing to see that we're sort of finally here anyways. So with that, if there's no further comments or question, I'd like to read the recommendation here that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington endorse report PNL 2025-19 regarding County of Wellington OPA 126, and authorize the Managing Director of Planning and Development to submit the comments outlined in report PNL 2025-19 to the County of Wellington. So do I have a mover for that? Councillor Jefferson, seconder on that. Councillor Adams, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll just take a moment to bring Councillor Wilton back in. Okay, we're going to go down to item 8.4, response to September 16th community delegation from Seagull Construction regarding attainable housing. And Brett, I guess you're going to continue to speak to that.
Yeah, gonna have to wing it because my computer died while I was sitting here and shut off. Anyways, I think I know the general flavor. No, it's okay, Pat. In September of 2024, you received a delegation from Seagull Construction about efforts I think that the township could do to try to assist in the development of affordable or attainable housing. And there were two elements to that presentation. They provided a sample resolution. Part of it was talking about using municipal finances to actually fund the development of affordable or attainable housing. And, you know, that's not really something that the township is in the business of. But one of the things in particular that they did make note of is the use of what's called a minister's zoning order. And so my report was an information report to give council more background on what a minister's zoning order is, what the process is, because we do think that there's a chance that in the future, we don't have any in front of us now, that some development will come forward where council may get asked to consider a minister's zoning order as a way to streamline the development approvals process. So a minister's zoning order is authorized by Section 47 of the Planning Act. It's and historically was used relatively rarely by the province. One example, when all the horse racing facilities got slot machines added, the existing ones, so not the Grand River Raceway, all the other ones were added the ability to have slot machines through a minister's zoning order. So that is where the minister is basically overriding the municipal zoning authority or the municipal zoning bylaw and making its own change that has the same effect as changing our zoning. So in more recent years, with in particular with the housing crisis and our current provincial government's efforts to reduce red tape and streamline development approvals, maybe for economic development or for housing purposes, there's been much more activity in use of minister's zoning orders. And in most recently changes to the Planning Act, they've made a number of changes to the framework that are intended to make it perhaps a little more palatable for municipalities to use it. One of the concerns that came up historically with the use of minister's zoning order is there's no public consultation requirement and nobody can appeal it. So a lot of municipalities found, well, that's just bypassing the public process. That's not really such a good thing. So what they built into the new framework is, for example, if the municipality were to request a minister's zoning order, or if a third party asked for a minister's zoning order, they could ask the municipality to endorse it. And that would come along with a requirement for there to have been public consultation before the minister receives the request. So I think they've addressed some of those concerns that the process is inadequate. And in my report, I attached a number of examples that have all just happened within the last 6 to 8 months, where municipalities have endorsed, in some cases, fairly significant development approvals. A very recent one was in the city of Waterloo on a fairly large acreage that's going to accommodate hundreds of units of potentially attainable housing. And there are another number of other examples in my report where municipalities have endorsed supportive housing, long-term care facilities, seniors facilities, through the use of a minister's zoning order that's endorsed by the municipality. One of the key things is this is obviously the approach is intended to streamline the development approvals process. So it's key that, you know, were a municipality to put forward a request, it needs to be something where the development can actually happen in a fairly short time frame. Services are available and whatnot. So that's part of the package that the municipality would have to submit, would be the demonstration, or the proponent, the demonstration that development could happen quickly. So what you're seeing through the ministry decisions, when a minister's zoning order request is denied, it's usually because there was no, it wasn't evident that the development could happen in the short term, like servicing capacity wasn't allocated. So this new framework is very much intended to be a municipal and a proponent partnership, where there's a fairly significant amount of background work that gets done, but through the minister's zoning order, hopefully a decision can get made rather quickly to streamline the development approvals process. Other things that have to happen in the process, like a subdivision plan or a condominium plan, they still rest in the normal way. The only thing the minister has the ability to do is basically it's a zoning amendment that's done by the minister. So all the same provisions that could go in a zoning bylaw can go in a minister's zoning order, and it's just as if the council approved it, but it's the minister doing it. So again, I think there's definitely occasions that may arise where we should be open to the prospect of considering a minister's zoning order if there's a request. One other, I think, significant thing in the context of what we've just kind of gone through with looking at the urban boundary expansion, there is specific language that in the policy statement that says if the municipality approves or endorses a minister zoning order, the minister approves a minister zoning order, that growth is considered to be in addition to the growth that you've accommodated through the exercise that we've just gone through, for example. So we don't have to get into the land need calculation. Well, we already expanded the urban boundary and that parcel didn't get included because it's considered to be on top of that requirement. So, you know, if we got an affordable housing proposal that happened not to be in the urban boundary, but we thought it could be developed in the short term, council could endorse that without the whole land needs assessment coming into play. So that's one other potential advantage to the minister zoning order process. Anyways, I think that's enough. The idea was to give you enough information so that if something did come forward, it would not be like, oh, what's this? I don't know anything about it.
Okay. Comments, questions? Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, and through you. Thank you, Brett, for the report. It was very helpful and very informative. I'm just a little bit curious with the recommendation that the report's just for information, and what you just said now makes me think it's for information now, but we're leaving the possibility open. So I'm just wasn't entirely clear if you think it's a good idea to be open to the MZO as an opportunity with the affordable housing, or if we should just park it for now. So I just was a little unclear.
Well, I didn't formulate a recommendation because we don't have one in front of us. I think my report makes it clear that it is something that we should be open to. And I don't know how you turn that into a recommendation, or if you just nod and, but I do think there's a chance that we will get one. You can see how many are being looked at in other municipalities. So definitely if something came forward, I think staff would be prepared to bring a report for your consideration.
Just to follow up, I might suggest that we look at amending that then to use some wording to say we should stay open to that possibility. We only have about 1.5 years left of our term, so it'd be this institutional knowledge might get lost a little bit depending on what happens. So it might be nice if the report also said the township would stay open to using this tool if and when an affordable housing project that was a good candidate came forward. So just a suggestion.
Well, the only my thing would be being too specific. You don't know what the MC, you know, there's obviously a lot of development or interest in our community. Some of these groups may look at the MCO to advance something, but we don't want to be so specific in terms of what that is because you never know what the opportunity is. So I think sort of our awareness of this is, I think, is a good thing for now. It doesn't delay, it doesn't preclude anything against it, but obviously we're aware of it. But the issue would be if you're so specific about something, there may be other things that you may be not aware of that someone may want to come forward, and then we lose out on that opportunity because we've been so specific on what that MCZO would be. So I think that's the you know, maybe you could speak to that. I think that's the danger of sort of indicating what that MCO would be for. I don't know. So maybe any comments that way?
I think if you look at the examples I've included, there's a number of different things. Housing are amongst them, but also long-term care, some kind of churches I think were in there, temples. So yeah, I tend to agree that it shouldn't be restricted to just affordable housing or housing in general, but there could be other things. We don't know what those are. Again, which is why there is no recommendation in the report.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. Just to jar my memory, didn't we have something come forward in a meeting in January about something similar about attainable housing that came forward from the province? I didn't have time to pull up that meeting. I feel like we discussed this before.
What we brought forward at a prior report was under development charges, certain types of housing are exempt from paying development charges.
Right.
And that's built into the Development Charges Act. They require agreements that they stay affordable for 20 or 21 years. And that's the report Adam brought forward previously.
And so
to endorse those.
That's totally different from this.
Totally different, yes.
And so Habitat for Humanity housing, it would fall under that and not this?
Habitat for Humanity's project was exempt because they're a nonprofit.
Okay.
But that could have been an example.
Mm-hmm.
As it happens, we put that zone change through pretty quickly. But, you know, in other communities, that's not the case. And so if something came forward from Habitat for Humanity, that could be an example where a minister's zoning order could be appropriate. That
Okay,
particular one we happen to process fairly quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you. I think at this time, like, I'm comfortable with the recommendation as it's stated. I think it was a really good information report and telling us about MZOs. I think, you know, this is a tool of the province, and I think a lot of times local planning is better done at the local level. So I would be uncomfortable giving it like this kind of overarching kind of like endorsement. I think we have to deal with things kind of as they may come to us.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters, I agree that with Councillor Adams, and take it like it comes. If we get an application somewhere in the future, then we'll deal with it then, instead of spending too much time on it now. And costs.
Any further comments or questions, or relate to Councillor Jefferson?
Thank you, Mayor Waters, through you. I was just going to say that also in the report, which is coming from our own planning and development with Brett, it's that council could consider requesting an MZO to approve a worthy project should for future circumstances warrant. So it's basically telling us that they themselves are open to it and open to bringing that to us. So even as a future council, they can look at it as well. But it seems to be something that's on Brett's plate that he would be willing to bring forward to us and acknowledge and use it as a tool in our own toolbox.
Any further comments or questions? Okay, so I will read the recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington receive report PLN 2025-21 for information. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton. Seconder on that, Councillor McDonald. Any further comments or questions as it relates to this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you very much for that report. Move down to 8.5, 2025 debt issues. And Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, and through you, this report is being brought forward to seek council direction to work with the township's financial institution to formalize a debt issue in the form of a fixed rate borrowing with an interest rate swap up to $27.7 million for the purposes of satisfying the long-term borrowing needs of the township. Staff have investigated 3 options to facilitate the debt issue, but are requesting approval to work with TD, which is the township's financial institution, to further investigate a new borrowing structure that will provide lower cost of borrowing than traditional methods, provide expedited access to cash, and an application process that is potentially less administratively burdensome than might otherwise be the case, given the number of projects being funded through this issue. It is anticipated that if, through an investigation, staff feel the proposed borrowing structure is viable, staff will report back to council with specifics, including an approval bylaw. And with that, I'm happy to field any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Adam. Councillor McDonald.
Through Mayor Waters, I agree with doing this now. Well, things are stable now. So thank you for bringing it forward at this time.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. I just had a question. I think it's on page 2. You say you have $27.7 million debt, of which approximately, should have put my glasses on my face, 86% will be serviced through development charge proceeds. So I'm curious if you can comment on our level of risk. There's chatter right now about potential reductions in development charges and perhaps even eliminating them in some cases and things like that. So I'm just curious if there was a significant change in development charge policies at the provincial level, what would be our level of risk in terms of taking on this debt at this time? So thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Wilton, and through Mayor Waters. Certainly there would be some risk associated with that if the province were to do something as drastic as remove DCs altogether. That said, we do have some mechanisms in place whereby we have a long-term capital forecast that kind of outlines which fund or which projects might be DC funded. We have the opportunity to pump the brakes on some of those should the capacity be required. We also have fairly stable DC reserves at present, and our long-term forecast that we review annually as part of budget, we could kind of change tack if needed to facilitate that. So I would suggest on balance, this is just seeking council direction to engage the conversation with TD and report back. We can certainly look at that at a staff level and kind of define what some of that risk might be. But I think on balance, we're fairly risk averse as a municipality, as certainly as it becomes to debt. We have an annual repayment limit that stipulates that 25% of kind of own source revenues. We set our limits internally much below that at 15%, and our latest debt forecast suggests that we are within those thresholds. So I think we're in fairly good stead.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Adam? Okay. Recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington direct staff to work with the Toronto Dominion Bank to formalize a debt issuance of in the form of a fixed rate borrowing with an interest rate swap of $27.7 million for the purpose of satisfying the long-term borrowing requirements of the 2025 calendar year for the township. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Adams, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Adam. Bylaws 2025-20, a bylaw to appoint members of the Board of Management of the Fergus and Elora Business Improvement Areas pursuant to S 204(3) of the Municipal Act as amended, and to repeal bylaw 2024-02. Recommendation that bylaws 2025-02 be read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and the corporate seal affixed. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Adams, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So move. Notice of motions. Motions where notice have been given. Confirmatory bylaw. Bylaw 12.1, bylaw to confirm the actions of council. Recommendation, bylaw 2025-21, to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held March 24th, 2025, be introduced the first, second, and third time and passed in open council. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Craddock, seconder on that. Councillor Jefferson, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, so move. Adjournment, do we have a mover for that? Councillor McDonald, a seconder on that. Councillor Wilton, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, so move. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for all your inputs.